In a small roadside diner on a cold, rainy night, an exhausted father has just enough money left to buy his little daughter one final dinner before payday. But when he notices a stranger's little girl frozen in place, staring at his child's plate of fries, everything changes. That child hadn't eaten since yesterday. Her mother tries to pull her away in silence, too ashamed to ask for help. Now this struggling father must make a choice that could destroy the fragile life he has built. Can kindness alone save them all? Andre Carter pushed open the heavy glass door of Rosie's diner, holding it just long enough for his 8-year-old daughter to slip in ahead of him. The rain followed them for a second, catching in the close-cropped curls of his hair and the dark stubble along his jaw, before the door swung shut and sealed them inside the warm golden light of the small roadside restaurant. The smell hit Andre first, fried chicken, fresh bread, coffee steaming behind the counter. It was the kind of smell that made a man with an empty stomach feel almost guilty for being there. Maya stood in the entryway, shaking the rain from the careful braids her father had spent nearly 40 minutes putting in that morning. Andre had learned to braid her hair the way his late wife had once taught him, sitting on the bedroom floor with a comb, a jar of grease, and an embarrassing amount of patience, until he had finally figured out how to part Maya's hair as neatly as her mother once had. He set his dark, calloused hands on her shoulders and steered her toward a booth near the window. He had spent 12 hours on the warehouse floor that day, lifting boxes that weighed almost as much as Maya did, and the muscles in his lower back had begun to throb during the last hour of his shift. None of that mattered right now. Tonight was Maya's night. "You picked the right booth, kiddo," he said, sliding onto the cracked vinyl seat across from her. "We've got a view of the rain and a view of the kitchen. Best seat in the house." Maya giggled. She pulled the laminated menu toward her with both hands, her eyes wide as she scanned every line as if she were reading a treasure map. Andre watched her for a long moment. She looked so much like her mother sometimes that it caught him off guard. The same stubborn little chin, the same way she squinted when she was concentrating, the same warm brown skin that seemed to hold its own quiet light the way her mother's had. "Daddy, can I really have anything I want?" she asked, carefully lowering the menu just enough to peek over the top. Andre hesitated for the briefest second. Inside his worn leather wallet, he had exactly $23.17. Payday wasn't until Friday. That money had to stretch through 3 more breakfasts, a few packed lunches, and at least 1 tank of gas for the old Ford parked outside. But tonight he had promised himself would not be about math. Tonight was about a little girl who had brought home a perfect score on her spelling test. "Tonight," he said, leaning forward and meeting her eyes, "you can have anything on that menu." Her face lit up like a Christmas tree. Andre felt something tight in his chest loosen for the first time in weeks. The waitress, a middle-aged woman named Linda, with a soft smile and tired eyes, came over with her order pad. Maya ordered a basket of fried chicken with a side of fries and a lemon soda. Andre ordered a coffee and a small bowl of soup, telling Linda he had eaten earlier at home. It was a lie, but a small one, the kind a father tells without thinking. Outside the window, the rain came down harder. Streetlights blurred into long yellow streaks across the wet pavement, and the few cars passing by sounded like distant waves. Inside the diner felt like a separate world entirely. A radio behind the counter played an old country song. 2 truckers sat at the counter sharing a slice of pie. The cook hummed quietly through the open kitchen window. Everything inside was warm and golden, and everything outside was cold and dark, and Andre let himself believe just for a moment that he and Maya belonged in the warm half of the world. He thought about his wife then the way he always did when small moments turned beautiful. 3 years gone, and still his mind reached for her in moments like this. They had been high school sweethearts in the small town where he grew up, back when his grandmother was still alive, and Sunday mornings smelled like buttermilk biscuits and the gospel station drifting from the kitchen radio. His wife would have ordered too much food. She would have stolen fries from Maya's plate and pretended not to. She would have laughed so loud that Linda would have come over just to laugh with her. Andre blinked the memory away and reached across the table to squeeze his daughter's small hand. This was a good night, he told himself. A perfect night. When Linda brought the food a few minutes later, Maya's eyes widened so much Andre almost laughed out loud. The chicken was golden brown, the fries were piled high in a red plastic basket, and the lemon soda fizzed in a tall, frosted glass with a striped paper straw. Maya reached for a fry with both hands, then remembered her manners and folded them in her lap, waiting for her father to nod his permission. "Go on," Andre said softly. "It's all yours." She dove in. Andre watched her with a smile that did not quite reach his eyes. He took a slow sip of his coffee and pretended to be very interested in the soup he barely touched. The warmth in his chest fought against the cold knot in his stomach. He would eat a real meal on Friday, he reminded himself. Today was for her. He let his gaze drift around the diner as Maya chattered between bites about her teacher, about a boy in her class who had drawn dinosaurs on his desk, about a stray cat that had followed her 2 blocks home that week. Andre nodded, smiled, asked the right questions. But somewhere between her story about the cat and her story about the spelling test, his eyes caught movement near the front door. A woman was standing just inside the entrance. Her coat was thin and soaked through at the shoulders. Her dark hair clung to her cheeks in damp strands, and the hem of her jeans was muddied from puddles. She held the hand of a small child, a little girl who could not have been older than 5. The child's sneakers were 2 sizes too big, and her sweater hung loosely over her tiny frame. The mother stood very still, her eyes fixed on the cashier's counter, as if she were doing some kind of difficult math in her head. Andre slowed his sips of coffee. Something about the woman pulled at him. She was not looking at the menu. She was not waiting for a table. She was just standing there, gathering courage the way people did when they were trying to decide whether to ask for something they were not sure they were allowed to ask for. The little girl, however, was not looking at the counter at all. She was looking at Maya's plate, not at Maya, not at Andre, at the basket of fries. The little girl's eyes were locked on that pile of golden potatoes the way other children might stare at fireworks or a puppy in a window. It was not the look of a kid who wanted a snack. Andre had seen that look before, and it sat in his memory in a place he tried not to visit. It was the look Maya had worn 3 years ago, 2 days after his wife's funeral, when the refrigerator had been empty and he had been too lost in grief to remember to buy groceries. It was the look of a child who knew on some deep and quiet level that food was not a guarantee. Andre's coffee cup paused halfway to his lips. The mother seemed to feel his attention. She glanced over, and for half a second their eyes met. Andre saw shame there. Pure, sharp shame. She looked away quickly and gave her daughter's hand a soft tug. "Come on, sweetheart," she whispered low enough that Andre barely heard her. "Let's go." The little girl did not protest. She turned obediently, her tiny hand still wrapped around her mother's. But just before she stepped fully toward the door, she looked back one last time at the basket of fries. It was the kind of glance that should not break a grown man's heart. But it did. Andre set his coffee cup down on the table with a soft click. Maya had stopped chewing. She had followed her father's gaze. She was a smart child, smarter than Andre sometimes wanted to admit, and she had seen the look on the little girl's face too. "Daddy," she whispered. Andre did not answer right away. His mind was already moving, already counting, already calculating what $23.17 could and could not buy. Andre rose from the booth before he could talk himself out of it. "Stay right here, sweetheart," he said quietly. "Eat your dinner. I'll be back in a minute." Maya nodded, her eyes very serious. She seemed to understand without him having to explain. He walked toward the door, his work boots squeaking faintly against the linoleum. The mother had nearly reached the exit. Her hand was already on the door handle. "Excuse me," Andre said softly. The woman froze. Her shoulders tightened in a way that told Andre she was used to being approached for the wrong reasons. She turned slowly, half shielding her daughter behind her leg. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice careful, almost apologetic. Andre held up his hands the way a man does when he is trying to show a frightened animal that he means no harm. "I'm sorry," he said. "I didn't mean to startle you. I just wanted to ask, would your daughter like something to eat on me? The woman's face went red. Not the soft pink of a blush, but the deep crimson of a person who had been brought to a place she had spent her whole life trying to avoid. She shook her head quickly. "No," she said. "Thank you, but we're fine. We were just stepping in out of the rain. We're leaving now." "You don't have to leave." "We do." She tried a thin, polite smile. "But thank you. That's very kind of you." She turned again to the door. The little girl let her hand be tugged, but her eyes lingered on the warm yellow lights of the diner. And then, in the small silence between the radio song ending and the next one starting, the diner heard her stomach. It growled. Not a soft, polite growl. It was the loud, low growl of a body that had been waiting too long for food. It seemed impossibly loud in the small room. The truckers at the counter glanced over and quickly looked away. Linda's eyes softened. The cook stopped humming. The mother's eyes filled instantly. She bent down to the little girl and pretended to fuss with her sweater so no one would see her face. Andre felt something crack quietly inside him. He looked back at his booth. Maya was watching everything. Without saying a word, she pushed her own plate toward the empty side of the table. 2 fries fell from the basket and landed on the placemat. Her small face was wide open and unafraid in the way only a child's face can be. "Ma'am," Andre said gently, "please just sit with us for a few minutes. You don't have to call it anything. You don't have to explain anything. My daughter has more food than she can eat, and the storm is getting worse out there. That's all this is." The woman straightened up slowly. She looked at him for a long moment. Andre saw it then very clearly, the fight inside her between pride and a mother's love. He had felt that same fight in himself many times. He waited. "My name is Andre," he said softly. "This is Maya." There was another small pause. Then the woman wiped her eyes quickly with the back of her hand. "Rachel," she said, "and this is Chloe." "Hi, Chloe," Andre said, and he crouched a little to be closer to the little girl's height. "We have a lot of fries. Would you like to help us eat them?" Chloe looked up at her mother. The woman gave a tiny broken nod. Chloe's whole face lit up, and the way she held that small smile back as if she was afraid it might disappear hurt Andre more than her stomach growl had. He led them to the booth and slid in next to Maya so that Rachel and Chloe could sit together on the other side. Linda appeared almost immediately with extra plates, more napkins, and an extra glass of water, and the way she set everything down without a single comment told Andre that she had been a waitress long enough to know exactly what kind of moment this was. She placed 2 warm dinner rolls on the table that no one had ordered and walked away. And here, for just a moment, it is worth slowing down. Because so often we picture kindness as a grand gesture, a donation, a rescue, a transformation that arrives like a storm. We forget that most of the kindness in this world is much quieter than that. A man who looks, a waitress who places 2 warm rolls on a table without asking why, a little girl who pushes her own plate forward without being told. None of it makes the news. None of it earns awards. But for the person on the receiving end, those small, almost invisible gestures can change the way an entire night feels. Sometimes the way an entire life feels. There is a kind of holy work happening in moments like this one, and most of the time the world walks right past it. Rachel ate slowly at first, the way a person eats when she is trying not to seem too hungry in front of strangers. Chloe had no such concern. The 5-year-old picked up a chicken nugget with both hands and bit into it as if she were afraid someone might come and take it away. She closed her eyes for a second after the first bite, a tiny sigh slipping out of her, and Andre had to look away for a moment and study a crack in the wallpaper. Maya noticed everything. She slid the basket of fries closer to Chloe's plate. She poured some of her lemon soda into the extra glass Linda had brought. She asked Chloe if she liked ketchup, or just plain the way she would have asked a classmate at lunch. "Both," Chloe whispered, her mouth full. "Me too," Maya said. And the 2 girls smiled at each other in that easy, immediate way that only small children can. Andre watched Rachel while the girls ate. She held a piece of bread for a long time before she actually tasted it. Her hands trembled slightly. After a few bites, she set the bread down and pressed her napkin against her mouth, and Andre could see her fighting against tears. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. We haven't eaten since yesterday morning." Andre did not pretend to be surprised. He nodded slowly. "You don't owe me an apology for surviving." She looked at him as if she had never been told such a thing in her life. Then she lowered her eyes and reached for her water. Over the next 20 minutes, in pieces and pauses, Rachel's story came out. She did not give him the whole thing. She gave him just enough so that he would understand. She had lost her apartment 3 weeks ago. Chloe had been sick most of the summer, a stubborn lung infection that had eaten up every spare dollar in doctor's visits and medication. Rachel had been waiting tables until the diner she worked at closed in August. She had tried to find another job, but no one wanted to hire a woman who could not afford reliable childcare for a sick 5-year-old. She had family back east, she said, but they were not the kind of family you called when you were in trouble. They were the kind of family you stopped calling for a reason. For the last 3 weeks, she and Chloe had been sleeping in her old hatchback. They parked behind a closed laundromat at night because the light stayed on there, and Rachel felt a little safer. During the day, they moved. The library, the park, a church basement on Tuesdays when they served free coffee and let people sit for as long as they wanted. It is worth saying this plainly because the world too often forgets it. In America today, there are millions of Rachels, mothers who do not look the way most people expect homeless people to look. They wash their children's faces in gas station bathrooms and brush their hair in the rear-view mirrors of old cars. They smile at strangers because they have not given up on the world yet. They do not stand on street corners. They sit in public libraries until closing time. They park behind quiet buildings at night because the lights make them feel a little safer. They are invisible by design because being seen in their position too often means being judged. The story unfolding inside this diner is not a rare one. It is happening right now in towns and cities and roadside parking lots across this country. We have driven past 1,000 Rachels without ever really seeing them. Andre listened without interrupting. He looked down at his hands while she spoke. They were rough, scarred hands, warehouse hands. He thought about all the things those hands could lift and all the things they could not. He understood Rachel more than she could possibly know. After his wife had died, there had been a month when he had not been able to make himself open the mail. Bills had piled up on the kitchen counter like leaves nobody wanted to rake. He had been 28 years old, holding a 1-year-old daughter staring into a refrigerator with 1 carton of expired milk and a jar of pickles and wondering how the world expected him to keep going. He had survived because 3 or 4 strangers had refused to look away. Miss Ruby, an older woman from the AME church down the block who had left a casserole on his porch every Sunday for almost a year without ever knocking. A pastor he had met only once, who had paid his electric bill in November. A co-worker at the warehouse who had quietly slipped a folded 20 into his lunchbox and pretended he hadn't. Andre had never been able to thank any of them in a way that felt big enough. He looked up. Rachel was watching him. "I know what it's like," he said. "Some of it anyway." Her eyes filled again. She nodded, very small. Across the table, Chloe had finished her chicken and was now methodically eating fries one by one, slowly, as if she wanted the meal to last forever. By the time the plates were cleared, the rain outside had thickened into something worse. The wind had picked up and the windows of the diner rattled softly whenever a gust struck. Linda went around, turning up the volume on the radio so the country music could be heard over the storm. Maya and Chloe were now huddled together on the same side of the booth, sharing a coloring page that Linda had quietly placed in front of them, along with a small cup of broken crayons. Andre paid the bill. He counted out the cash twice to make sure he had not made a mistake. Linda looked at the small stack of crumpled bills and shook her head. "Soup and coffee are on the house tonight, Andre," she said. "Don't argue with me. I'm in charge of this register." He almost did argue. Pride is a strange thing. It can live in 2 men equally, even when one of them has more than the other. But Linda's eyes did not invite a debate, and Andre was tired, and he had 2 extra mouths to think about now. He knotted his throat tight and slid the last of his money back into his wallet. Rachel gathered Chloe's coat and zipped it carefully up to her chin. The little girl looked up at her mother. "Where are we sleeping tonight, Mama?" Chloe asked. Rachel smoothed her daughter's hair and forced a bright smile. "We're going on an adventure," she said. "Just like last night, remember?" Chloe nodded, but her shoulders sagged a little. She knew what adventure meant. Andre saw it in her small body, the resignation a child should not yet know how to carry. They stepped out under the awning of the diner together. The rain was hitting the pavement so hard it bounced. Rachel's old hatchback was parked across the street, a small dark shape under a streetlight, its windshield streaked with water and what looked like rust running down from the wipers. Andre could see that one of the back tires was nearly flat. Rachel held out her hand to him. "Thank you," she said, and her voice was steady but very quiet. "I don't have a way to repay you for tonight, but I'll never forget it." Andre shook her hand. Her fingers were freezing. "You don't owe me anything," he said. She nodded once and turned. She lifted Chloe into her arms because the puddles were too deep for the little girl's oversized sneakers, and she began to make her way across the street holding her thin coat closed at the collar with her free hand. Andre watched them go. He felt Maya's small hand slip into his. "Daddy," she said. "I know, sweetheart. They can't sleep in that car tonight." Andre did not answer. His eyes were fixed on Rachel's silhouette as she fumbled with the key in the driver's side lock. The wind was tossing her hair into her eyes. Chloe was crying now very quietly, the kind of crying a child does when she has learned that loud crying does not help. The car door finally opened. Rachel set Chloe inside and climbed in after her. The interior light flickered on for a moment and then died as if the battery itself was running on fumes. The window of the hatchback fogged almost immediately. Andre could not move. He stood under the awning with his daughter's hand in his, and his work jacket still damp on his shoulders and his wallet almost empty, and his apartment 4 miles away, with a single bed for himself, a small bed for Maya, a couch with broken springs, and a refrigerator that held milk, half a loaf of bread, 3 eggs, and the last of his peanut butter. He thought about all of it. He thought about how thin the line was between his own life and the life he was watching across the street. He thought about the casserole on his porch all those years ago, the folded 20 in his lunchbox, the pastor who had paid his electric bill without ever asking him for anything in return. He thought about Maya. Then he thought about how he would feel tomorrow morning opening the curtains of his apartment, knowing that somewhere out there in the cold, a little girl had spent another night in a car. "Daddy," Maya whispered. Andre took a long breath. He let go of Maya's hand for a moment and ran both hands down his face. The skin under his eyes felt papery. He had not slept more than 5 hours a night in a week. Inside his head, 2 voices were arguing in the way they always argued when he tried to do the right thing while also being a poor man. The first voice was old and tired. It reminded him of all the reasons he could not help. His apartment was small. His wallet was empty. He had a daughter to think about. He had bills. He had a body that was already breaking down under the weight of double shifts. He did not have room in his life for 2 more people. He did not have heat enough food, enough blankets enough. The second voice was quieter. It did not argue. It just kept showing him a casserole dish on a porch, a neighbor he had never properly thanked. He thought about Rachel's face. He thought about her trembling hands. He thought about how she had said, "I don't have a way to repay you," as if she truly believed that life was a transaction and a stranger's kindness was an invoice. He thought about Chloe falling asleep in the front seat of an old hatchback while rain hammered the roof. "Maya," Andre said. "Yes, Daddy. What we have at home isn't much." "I know. The couch is broken, the kitchen is small, there's only 1 bathroom." "I know." Maya looked up at him. Her hair was damp from the wind that snuck under the awning. Her eyes were the same color as her mother's eyes had been. "They don't need a big house, Daddy," she said. "They just need a roof for tonight." Andre closed his eyes for a second. He thought about the man he wanted to be. He thought about the man Maya was watching him become, but he hesitated. He hesitated because he was scared. He was scared of running out of money before Friday. He was scared of waking up tomorrow and realizing he had taken on a responsibility he could not finish. He was scared of Rachel's pride of being told no, of getting all the way across that street only to be turned away in the rain. He was scared of being one of those well-meaning men who do something kind once and cannot follow through. And underneath all of it, he was scared of how easily he could become Rachel. How easily Maya could become Chloe. He was one bad accident, one missed paycheck, one broken-down truck away from sleeping in a car himself. Maybe that was what made it the hardest. It would have been easier if Rachel had been a stranger from another world, but she was not. She was a mirror. He looked across the street. The lights inside the hatchback were off now. He could just barely make out Rachel's shape leaning back against the driver's seat, her head tipped against the window. Chloe was probably curled against her side. Andre stood there for what felt like a long time. The rain blurred the world around him. The diner sign behind him buzzed softly. Maya waited beside him, patient the way she had learned to be patient very early in life. He could turn around. He could walk back to his Ford. He could drive Maya home and tuck her into bed and tell himself he had already done a kind thing tonight. The fries. The conversation. The bill. That was already more than most men would have done. No one would ever blame him for stopping there. But Andre knew in the cold, quiet center of himself that he would blame himself. He took a step away from the awning and the rain hit him full in the face. Then he stopped. A new fear caught him by the throat, sharper than the others. What if he was wrong? What if bringing Rachel and Chloe home was not the brave thing but the foolish thing? What if he was the man who thought he was a hero and ended up dragging his own child into deeper trouble? Maya was 8 years old. She was already going to school in shoes that pinched her toes because Andre had been saving for new ones until next month. She was already eating half portions for dinner while her father pretended he was not hungry. What if helping Rachel meant Maya would have to share what little there was with 2 more people? What if it meant he could not even buy those new shoes after all? He stood in the rain, not under the awning anymore, not yet across the street, but caught somewhere in the middle. Water ran down the back of his neck. The streetlight above him flickered. And here, in this single soaked moment, something quiet reveals itself if you watch closely enough. The people most likely to cross a flooded street for a stranger are almost never the ones with the most to give. They are the ones who remember what it feels like to need. The man with a comfortable life often turns away. The man with $23 in his wallet and a memory of an empty kitchen 3 years ago, that man is the one who steps into the rain. Generosity in the end is not measured by what we can afford to lose. It is measured by what we are willing to risk for someone we have only just met. He looked at the hatchback. He looked back at the diner door where Maya watched him through the glass with her small hand pressed against it. For a moment, Andre felt the entire weight of his life settle onto his shoulders. The years of grief, the bills, the aching back, the empty side of the bed. The nights he had laid awake terrified that he was not raising Maya the way her mother would have. The quiet, gnawing fear that he was barely keeping his own head above water and that any new burden would pull him under. It felt impossible. He stood there with his hands at his sides, rain streaming down his face, and for one terrible second he thought he might do the unthinkable. He might walk back to the diner. He might take Maya home. He might lock the door behind him and try to forget this whole night had ever happened. Then he thought of his wife. Not in any specific way. He just thought of her, of how she would have looked at him from across the booth and known without him having to say a word exactly what he should do. She had been the better of the 2 of them. She had been the one who stopped for stray cats, the one who emptied her purse into every collection jar she saw, the one who handed her umbrella to a stranger and walked home through a storm because someone else needed it more. She had married him because she had seen that same thing in him. He had let it sleep for 3 years because grief had been louder than goodness. But it was still there. He could feel it stirring now under his sternum, an old muscle remembering how to move. Andre took another step into the street. The rain came down harder. He felt small under it. He felt like a man who did not know what he was doing. But he kept walking. And it is worth pausing here gently before the story moves on. Most of us imagine that doing the right thing should feel certain. That goodness should feel brave and clean and obvious the way it looks in movies. The truth, more often than not, is much quieter than that. The people who change other people's lives do so while trembling. They do so afraid. They do so without knowing how the story will end. Courage, it turns out, is rarely the absence of fear. It is the small, soaked, uncertain decision to keep walking when every part of you wants to turn around. And sometimes the most important thing a person ever does in their whole life is take one more step into the rain. The hatchback's window was fogged over. Andre raised his hand and tapped softly on the glass. Inside, Rachel jerked upright. He could see her shape stiffen in alarm. The window came down a crack. "Andre," she whispered, her voice sharp with fear and surprise. "It's me," he said. "I'm sorry. I know how this is going to sound." She did not say anything. She waited. Her face was pale in the dim light from a nearby street lamp. Chloe had her head in her mother's lap, half asleep, and Rachel's hand was resting protectively on her daughter's hair. Andre crouched down so he was at eye level with the cracked window. Rain ran off the back of his neck and into his collar. "I have a small apartment," he said. "2 bedrooms. The second one is barely big enough to fit Maya's bed, but the couch in the living room folds out. It's old. The springs are loud. But it's dry and the heat works, and there's a shower with hot water." Rachel was already shaking her head. "Andre, we can't." "You don't have to stay long," he said. "Just tonight. Just until we figure out a real next step. You have my word. No expectations, no conditions. Just a roof until the storm passes." "We don't even know each other." "I know. That's the whole problem with the world, isn't it?" She blinked. A laugh almost escaped her, a short, broken thing. "I can't ask you to do this," she said. "It's too much. You don't have to do this." "I'm not doing it because I have to," Andre said. He paused. The rain pattered between them. "I'm doing it because someone did it for me once." Rachel looked at him for a long moment. Her chin began to tremble. She held very still the way some people do when they are about to cry and do not want to. "My daughter," she whispered. "She has nightmares. She wakes up sometimes. She's loud, Andre. She might wake your little girl up." "Maya sleeps through tornadoes," Andre said quietly. "She'll be fine." "I don't have..." Rachel's voice broke. "I don't have anything to give you. I can't pay you. I can't even buy us groceries tomorrow. I'm not asking for any of that." "Then what do you want?" Andre thought about how to answer. He thought about every kind person who had ever helped him without leaving him a bill. He thought about his grandmother, who used to say that the only way you ever truly repay a kindness is by passing it on to somebody else. "I want you and your daughter to be warm tonight," he said. "That's the whole list." Rachel began to cry. The tears came quietly without any fight. She turned her face away for a moment, embarrassed, and Chloe stirred in her lap and looked up at her mother. "Mama," Chloe whispered. Rachel pressed her hand to her own mouth and nodded a few times, very small. Then she looked back at Andre through the cracked window of her car, and she said the word that changed both of their lives. "Okay." Andre helped them carry what little they had. A canvas duffel bag with their clothes, a small plastic bin of Chloe's drawings and stuffed animals, a grocery sack with the last of their food, half a sleeve of crackers, and a jar of peanut butter. He locked the hatchback for her. He told her they could come back and tow it tomorrow, that he knew a guy at the warehouse who had a friend with a flatbed. Rachel nodded, dazed, the way people nod when something kind has happened so suddenly that they have not yet had time to believe it. The drive to his apartment took 12 minutes. Maya and Chloe sat together in the back seat. Rachel held the duffel bag in her lap. The wipers fought against the rain and the heater whispered warm air across their feet. Nobody said much. Andre kept both hands on the wheel and his eyes on the road. Every so often he glanced into the rearview mirror at the 2 little girls. Chloe had her small head leaning against Maya's shoulder. Maya had her arm around Chloe the way Andre had once seen his wife wrap an arm around a friend at a funeral. His apartment was on the 2nd floor of a tired brick building. The hallway smelled like old carpet and someone's microwave dinner. The lock stuck the way it always did. Andre apologized for it. Rachel told him not to. Inside, he turned on the lamp in the corner. The living room glowed soft and yellow. There was a hand-me-down couch with a quilt thrown over the back, a small television set on a stack of old phone books, and a row of Maya's drawings taped to the wall above the radiator. Beside the door, a faded photograph of Andre's grandmother in her Sunday hat still hung in a wooden frame as it had hung in every place Andre had ever called home. Rachel stood very still in the middle of the small room holding Chloe's hand. "It's not much," Andre said. "It's beautiful," Rachel whispered. Andre cleared his throat and got to work. He pulled out a clean set of sheets from a hall closet. He showed Rachel the bathroom, where to find clean towels, how to wiggle the handle on the cold faucet so it would stop dripping. He fished out 2 of his old t-shirts for Chloe and Rachel to sleep in. He apologized for the broken couch springs. Rachel told him again not to. Maya took charge of Chloe. She gave her a tour, very serious and important, of all the most exciting things in the apartment. The cabinet under the bathroom sink where the nightlight was kept. The drawer in the kitchen with the good crayons. The window in Maya's bedroom that you could see the moon from on clear nights. By the time Andre had unfolded the couch, Rachel had washed Chloe's face and brushed her hair. Chloe climbed onto the couch like a small queen, and Rachel tucked her in, and within 5 minutes, Chloe was breathing the deep, slow breaths of a child who was sleeping in a real bed for the first time in 3 weeks. Rachel sat on the edge of the couch watching her daughter sleep. Andre placed a folded blanket beside her. "Thank you," she whispered, not looking up. "You're welcome," he said. Then he turned off the lamp and walked into the kitchen and stood for a long moment with both hands flat on the counter, listening to the rain on the window and the soft, even sound of Chloe breathing in the next room. In the morning, the rain had stopped. A pale gold light came through the kitchen window. Andre was already up, sitting at his small table with his hands wrapped around a coffee mug. He had not slept much. He had spent half the night doing math in his head, trying to figure out how to stretch the next 4 days of groceries to feed 4 people instead of 2. He did not have all the answers yet. He did not know how the next week would go or the next month. He did not know what would happen when Rachel's old hatchback finally gave out, or where she would find work, or whether the small apartment would feel too small by week's end. But sitting at the table with the morning light on the floor, Andre realized something he had not let himself feel in a very long time. He did not feel alone. He heard small footsteps. Maya and Chloe came around the corner in their pajamas, hand in hand, their hair sticking up in every direction. Chloe stopped at the edge of the kitchen and looked up at Andre a little shyly. Then she smiled a real smile, the kind a 5-year-old gives when she has decided a grown-up is safe. "Good morning, Mr. Andre," she said. Andre had to swallow before he could answer. "Good morning, Miss Chloe." Rachel came in a moment later. Her hair was damp from a shower. She was wearing one of his old t-shirts and a pair of jeans she had pulled from the duffel bag. She looked younger than she had the night before. The dark circles under her eyes were still there, but something else was there too. A small, quiet light. She crossed to the counter and started making toast, as if she had lived in his kitchen her whole life. Maya showed Chloe where the cereal bowls were kept. Andre watched all of them and felt his chest open in a way he had forgotten chests could open. He thought about the diner the night before, the fries on Maya's plate, Chloe's small stare, the decision he had almost not made. It had been such a small thing. A man noticing a hungry child, a child sharing her dinner, a door held open in the rain. But that was how hope worked, Andre realized. Not in lightning bolts, not in grand miracles, just in the small, quiet moment when one person on one ordinary night decided not to look away. Outside, the morning kept getting brighter. Inside, 4 people who had walked into a diner as strangers sat down together for breakfast. And so this story leaves us gently with something small enough to carry home. You do not have to be wealthy to be the answer to someone's prayer. You do not have to have a plan. You do not have to know the right words to say. You only have to be the one who sees, the one who pauses long enough to ask, the one who on an ordinary night on an ordinary street when nobody is watching and nothing is required of you, decides not to look away. Because in the end, that is how the world heals, not all at once, not by miracle, but by one person and then another and then another choosing kindness in the small, quiet moments when no one would have blamed them for choosing easier. May we all, when our moment comes, find the courage to walk into the rain,